You're listening to the Occupational Philosophers with Simon Banks and John Rice.
Hello and welcome to the Occupational Philosophers, a not-so-serious business podcast, which is a mashup of creativity, curiosity, play, imagination, with a little bit of philosophy thrown in. This is an in-betweener episode. It's a short, sharp burst of inspiration, delight and fruitiness. And as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, co-producer, Simon Banks in Australia. Simon, how are you today?
I'm balancing between states of being and non-being.
Okay. Is that wine is influencing that state of being or non-being?
Well, John, I'm like a giraffe in a fog machine. I'm kind of lost, but with a very good view of the confusion.
You're losing me. What have you been up to, Simon?
I've been exploring the nuances of everyday occurrences.
That sounds very ambiguous.
Well, John, I'm glad you mentioned ambiguity because that is something I'd like to talk about today.
Excellent. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Now, the reason I want to talk about this is, and this probably exists a lot in the space of the work that I do, very much we're in the space of innovation and design and solving problems for challenges that have not been solved before. So, as such, there's a lot of ambiguity, which is like you get when you do anything new. There's no reference point, there's no case study, there's no best practice. So there's a lot of ambiguity in it. So I thought it might be nice to dive into some of the reasons it exists, how we might be a bit more comfortable in it, and also maybe what teams and leadership teams can do as well.
That sounds excellent. Yes. Where should we start?
Doing some research as we do for this show, I've realized organizations aren't hardwired the way they operate to be okay with ambiguity. And I know we've been chatting about a few of these points, so let's maybe talk through some of them as well. Number one, have you ever heard an organization say, "Hey, we want more risk"? No, of course you haven't, and absolutely understandable. But ambiguity involves uncertainty, which creates that feeling of uncomfortableness because there's unforeseen outcomes which may occur. And every organization, let's say every board, I'm imagining, having not sat on many, they want predictable scenarios which can mitigate risk.
Yes, and one of the other factors that I'll see as well is just the desire to just be making decisions and keep moving forward. And any countenance of something that's ambiguous, uncertain, just slows everything down, doesn't it? So you have that desire, rightfully so in many instances, again, it will be context dependent, to not miss an opportunity and keep moving forward on something rather than slowing down.
And look, that feels completely rational to make decisions as quickly as you can and move on to the next thing. Like we would do that at home and in all sorts of situations. Let's make a decision. Let's move on. Let's get on with the rest of our life. But what I've discovered over many years of working in this space, if you rush, you can actually make the wrong decision because you're actually making a decision without a full understanding what the problem is as well.
Yeah, it's a difficult balancing act. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's why I struggle with this all the time, isn't it?
That's why I thought it's really nice to think around the way organizations are set up as well. And when you think around maybe the way these things are measured as well, they're thinking, KPIs and performance metrics. And I think you do a little bit of stuff in your space. Is there anything, how do you measure ambiguity? You've dealt with ambiguity. You know what I mean? There's probably not a definitive measure for you've sat in that space well. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's a good point, isn't it? I wonder if you could have some criteria around that so that as a decision came forward, you could decide against some criteria whether that decision needed to be slow and methodical, almost system 2 thinking decision, as Daniel Kahneman would have said, over a system 1 instinctive decision, which would be, should we have a summer party in the organization? That's quite a quick decision, but
yeah.
Should we move into China as a geographical market? Slightly more ambiguous.
And I often like to share, I guess, this notion of there's really fast, quick decisions you would make all day, every day. And let's say during let's say COVID, when that came around, you had to make quick, fast decisions immediately. Which are those ones? Even though they were ambiguous, you had to make quick decisions. But then also longer term, you're sitting there ambiguous. So it's like that fast thinking, slow thinking as well, or so those different styles of coming about it. But you work in the space of 360 performance appraisals. Would that be right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, have done
Now,
for many years. Yeah.
Is there anything in those appraisals around sitting in this space or being okay with ambiguity?
Well, there's always that thing of individuals trying to balance between long-term, short-term, strategic, tactical. So there's always tensions as to where you need to go at one end of the spectrum to the other. And so the same here, it would be, is this decision, making decisions or being decisive? That would be something that might come through on a leader's 360, where people want them to be quite more decisive than they are. But often they're seeing it as a desire to get consensus, or they recognize the ambiguity and the uncertainty of it and try to hold the conversation or the space for the conversation a bit longer than maybe other people might want to.
And here lies this tension, John, with this ambiguity. Let's say we have a leader, you would want a leader who's clear and decisive is the word, decisive, but also in that tension of going, well, what if it's not a clear and decisive answer?
Yeah. Well, and much of leadership is navigating tensions and trying to keep a balance and paradoxes, as they might say. Hey, that takes us towards physics and philosophy. And that's a space I like to play.
Now, I've been thinking around some of these other things as well. Like if you think of the way an organization may be set up to train, you would be trained to seek clear answers and avoid any type of uncertainty, wouldn't you? Like that's the way. And these are really valuable skills. So don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of saying, hey, things are being done wrong, but you think the things we may seek may almost hold us back when we're dealing with something like a wicked challenge, which is a complex problem that is difficult to define, has no clear solution, and is interdependent with other issues.
Yeah, that last one, that's interesting for me, because that's that almost systems thinking piece.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
If you can recognize that there are a lot of interdependencies and moving parts, as it were, that if you push one lever, something else happens in another part of the organization that you haven't considered the impact, then it's definitely in the wicked pile. Bucket, basket, where are we putting these?
All of those are pretty good. Yeah.
How about a wicker basket, so we can have a wicked wicker basket?
I like it. They're all pretty good. Given that, I think when you stand back and reflect and you go, yeah, look, the organizations are not necessarily in a negative way, they're designed to not want to have ambiguity, because you don't want to be saying to your shareholders, by any means, and the company invested, we're not quite sure, etc., etc. However,
we don't know what's going on. It's really complex. We haven't got a clue.
Give me millions. However, as we know, and we've spoken around the tuna and turd environments before, there is a lot of ambiguity. So which gets me, I think the next part of this, let's say I think there's a few different levels you can watch out for. On a personal level, I think it's really important to think, how am I in this space? Because I see this as a huge, big part of, if you're personally more comfortable in that, what would it look like? And then also, I think on a leadership level, which we talk about, but again, just stuff I've seen over the last 12, 18 months, 24 months, the more leaders are okay with, I'm really comfortable with your working in this ambiguous space to create an answer for us, I think drives a really strong message.
Just as you say that as well, so again, we know this will come back to curiosity, is the idea that simple problems, you come forward with answers potentially. You go, I think this is the way to solve it. But when you've got wicked problems and something which is genuinely ambiguous or uncertain, the challenge or the skill there to encouraging people is to come forward, well, what question might help us unlock this or move us forward?
Yeah.
And that is still, again, that's something, that's my bugbear, is I don't see people come forward with enough questions, and you kind of need to create that environment. And then you can say to the shareholders, look, we don't have an answer, but these are the questions we're exploring, because we think that's going to take us closer to something that will be beneficial for
of high
the client, the
value for
organization,
your
you as the
portfolio.
shareholders, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Now, I like when we think about it, because at the heart of that is being curious. And as we've always said, every guest we have on, hey, let's talk about curiosity. And I like this way of framing it. Think of uncertainty as a puzzle rather than a problem. Now, some people hate puzzles, but some people love puzzles.
Yeah, what we say, so what's it, a puzzle? You mean like people like Wordle
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, you're a jigsaw.
Sudoku.
And you've dropped that bad boy on the floor, and so
Yeah.
there's just like 2,000 pieces everywhere. But if you spend enough time in it, you'll find a leaning tower of Pisa or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, not in our house, and I've never solved the Rubik's Cube either.
Yeah, so but the Rubik's Cube,
I think I chucked it at the wall a few times.
If you're like me, and I'll put myself in there, go, nah, can't be done. These guys, when like they used to have the
it's genuinely impossible
back in the 90s or something. I just go, nah, can't be done. So there's two ways to do this.
By the way, there's a great film if you ever get to watch it as a digression, called Speed Cubers, and it is all about the Rubik's Cube people who solve this thing in 3 seconds. Fantastic watch. Even though I still look at it and go, it's impossible. No one can.
Yeah. There's two ways to do it. You pull the stickers off, or you pull it apart and like clunk it back together. Once you get your head around that.
Is that cheating or lateral thinking?
Well, either way, it's lateral problem solving. But like, I love that. Think of this as a puzzle rather than a problem.
And there's something quite satisfying about when you are in that environment and you do find a question that you think, that's the question to explore. And that's you haven't got the answer, but you've suddenly gone, what if we explore this question? That's a great idea. And I do see the energy levels change in a room with a team when they suddenly go, that is absolutely the question we should be wrestling with.
Yeah, and one of our previous guests, maybe episode 20 or 30, entrepreneur Mike Parsons, also of the Moonshots podcast as well. And big shout out, Mike. Yeah, see your numbers pump up now. I'll tell you, do the same, thanks. And
quid pro quo. Come on, Mike.
Yeah,
shout us out.
And he, a notion of his I speak about is he spoke at this time in the Valley. Like anytime you work on a challenging problem, especially in the space of innovation, when I've done some work with Mike, he'll say, like, you go through these valleys, and I'm sort of, meandering my hand across the screen. And the valley is, I find, 95% of the problem. The first valley you encounter, what's the question we need to be asking here? And it's that one little word can change everything. But like you've said, when you go, hell yeah, we've got it, the whole energy and the mood lifts, and all of a sudden you go, okay, we've actually gone from being ambiguous, having ambiguous in the sense of not knowing the question, to being very clear in the question, even though the solutions may still be ambiguous as well.
And one of the other things to that is, and you said about paying attention to yourself and how you react when things are ambiguous, and the anxiety it can create. And sometimes it's nice to acknowledge that in the room as well. As a leadership team, it is to go, hey, look, this is going to be a bit uncomfortable. We're in a valley at the minute, but that's okay. That's expected. We should just be comfortable with a little bit of distress or discomfort, because ultimately we come together. We will be able to find a way out of this valley to the next peak. But relax. Don't worry. What are some of the things to watch out for? I know you've thought about this. There's some pitfalls, I think, that are quite common that we might see, particularly in teams, isn't it, as coming together trying to solve this, or organisations by extension. But what do you see?
Look, a couple, just doing a little bit of research on it. There's probably 3 which popped out, and you often hear this piece, I'm a perfectionist. And let's say if you're a plastic surgeon, just running at it like
that is a moment where I would want them to be perfectionists.
Exactly. If I'm getting a nose job, I don't want someone to go, hey, I'm okay with ambiguity. A bit of Shrek, a bit of bit of Picasso.
Ambiguous. What is it? It's a nose. Well, it doesn't look like it.
It's a form. I want someone to go, yeah, I'm a perfectionist. And there's probably any other
pilots.
Hair transplant.
There's a few, isn't there, where you go, actually, do you
Heart
know what?
surgeon.
Yeah, we want that.
Perfectionism is good. However, is that perfectionism possibly holding you back in the initial stages? You want initial stages of testing and being okay with it. We don't know what perfect is yet. Are we better to let go a little bit of that until a little bit of sitting in that complexity, trying and testing new things will get us closer to perfect. Any others you can think of?
The mindset one, which you kind of touched on before, I mean, recognizing what frame of mind you're going into these scenarios, these ambiguous scenarios, and you sort of paying attention to how it might make you feel or etc. But you've got to go in believing in some possibility. I know there's talk around growth mindset, fixed mindsets, and fixed mindsets might have you go, no, this is not something we can do. We'll never. This is beyond our sort of capability or whatever. But the growth mindset of being, okay, we haven't solved it yet, might be that kind of sort of spin on the growth mindset thing. So fixed mindsets, if you think that there's only one way of coming at this, and abilities and intelligence and everything is static and cannot be changed, that's going to limit your ability to sit in ambiguity for sure.
And what's your stance on coriander or cilantro for our many listeners in the US?
They're one and the same, aren't they, Simon?
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're coriander or cilantro.
And is it oregano and oregano is the other thing that we should say. I know that's the same word, just said differently, but yeah.
But what's your stance on coriander or cilantro? Do you like it or not?
Do I like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like coriander.
Okay, now this is why some people hate it, and so which brings me to this next thing of that black and white thinking, which is that everything's in extremes. Coriander or cilantro sucks, or it's the most amazing accompaniment, which I'm in your camp. Okay. So that's the ability. Things are either good or bad. So it's that ability to sit. There's that massive grey area in the middle, and listening on political discourse from many of our listeners' countries as well, including your own and mine, the States as well. That there's a little bit more. There's a lot of grey area. So it's being okay, I think, rather than going good, bad. That football code sucks. This is good. I hate cricket, or all sporting analogies. But that thing around there. So being okay with, hey, there's a big area in the middle. I know what I enjoy, but hey, I'm open to what could be. So.
And I was thinking, again, not losing sight of the mindset thing as well. We said about, being comfortable with it. There's a great quote by Mario Livio. He's an astrophysicist, but I think he has a nice philosophical sort of side to his work and some of the things he talks about. But he says, tolerance of ambiguity is a necessary condition for creativity.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? For ideas to emerge, for creative things to emerge, for innovation, for problem solving that on the face of it seem to be really complex. You've got to be able to sit in it. You've got to be able to tolerate it. And I thought that was a nice addition to that idea of how you have to come into these scenarios in the first place.
And I'll take it from a perspective, say, I'm a painter and you're a writer. If you think around that, like all the paintings I've done, so most of mine are abstract. So you've got a little bit of a concept, well, they're all 99% abstract. You've got the concept in your head, but as you start to push stuff around, the ambiguity is crazy. Like you put one bit of paint on, you go, oh my God, it's changed the whole notion of what I had in mind. And I put too much on that's ruined. It's you scraping stuff off. So that I always sort of feel it's a really nice, like going a bit meta here, John, so I just want to acknowledge that. But like learning about art wasn't really around learning how to paint. It was really learn how to think. And that thinking, which comes with writing as well, like, there's so much ambiguity when you start, but you refine and you improve and all of these different things. And then you might, you might get to the end of it and you go, oh, publish, not my best work. You know what I mean? So there's still that, that's still that notion of, is it right? Is it complete? But sitting in that space of going, I know eventually if I keep pushing forward, good will come of it. So.
Yeah, and no light bulb moment ever came out after anything other than a deep well of ambiguity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
like
uncertainty.
David
and
Crosby,
unknowing.
Yeah, said in our last episode, it's tough. And it's Dr. Cindy Burnett, it's tough, it's sitting in that space is tough.
Yeah. And we do it in different guises. I mean, some of the work that we'll do will be a lot of investigative work and drawing out sort of data and qualitative, quantitative data. And ultimately, that analysis, as you pull it all together, to say, what's the theme here? What's the story that needs to emerge from this? That doesn't emerge naturally or without some effort. And you sit in ambiguity for quite some time, and then suddenly the clouds part.
Yeah,
and you see
goes,
something.
oh,
Something
like
emerges
from the sky. Yeah. Given that organizations are naturally hardwired to not have this stuff, and not for bad reasons either, I've thought, well, what are some things that leaders can do that might be a little bit different? Okay, so lead this culture. And I like this one I came across, hold ambiguity talks. I thought, oh, all right, what's that? So sit down, schedule those meetings to discuss uncertainty and the more complex problems the organization might be dealing with openly. So rather than saying, hey, we're all under control, this is a strategy and nothing will stray from it, as an example, I think it's really nice to be open and say, hey, this is some of the more ambiguous stuff we're dealing with outside of the usual VUCA talks. Like, what are some of those things where you might be able to say, hey, look, there's 7 or 8 answers here. As present, we are not sure what the answer is, but wouldn't we love your input? So I like that. It's sort of like you go to, there's a festival, the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. You might go to a philosophy lecture. The talk is around not the answer, it's around the question. Yeah, which I think is a nice way to think about it.
I think that's great. There was this reminded me of that, that not all problems are created equal, and so the idea of the mindset we need to go into a discussion around a problem that's simple compared to one that is ambiguous or wicked, and coming out of our wicker basket of problems, that the mindset needs to be different, the preparation might need to be different, the process you follow in the discussion needs to be different, which would be that sort of, if we're here to discuss wicked problems, we go at it like this. You come with questions, as I say, rather than your thoughts and expertise from your domain. You come at it very differently. So, I do like that. Yeah.
Now, you're in the space of feedback. Let's say you do a lot of that sort of 360, anything from your world around, because I know it's around your space, how leaders might, what could they do in that sort of feedback space, do you think?
Well, they're just, again, it's all about seeing feedback as something that is necessary to help improve performance, whether that's of individuals, whether that's of teams. And just, again, it's a bit mindset. The feedback for culture that you might want to create has got to be where people are not defensive. They don't respond to something as an attack, but a healthy challenge that's going to help that individual, that team move forward. So, and when you're ambiguous situations, there's going to be things where you've not quite got it right, or you've tried something and it's not quite gone right. And so the feedback becomes something that is maybe framed more as a learning moment, I think.
So see it as a development tool rather than criticism. And I've shared this before, that notion of, here's what I like about what you're saying, and I wonder if we thought of this or we did this, what that could add to it. I think that's I wish, I wonder, is a really nice piece.
I've tried that a few times. Yeah, that was an absolutely shit project there, Kevin, but I like your tie.
No, you say, I like the tie first.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Right. Kevin, I like your tie. That project was shit.
No. Then you say, I wonder what you could have done to make it less shit. Yeah. So Kevin feels good. He's going, tie's awesome. Thanks. Izzy Miyake tie. Thanks. Japanese tailoring. And then, but no, I know we laugh, but I think that I wonder is a really nice thing. And you think though, this probably goes to this ambiguity. What do we listen out for when someone shares something? Naturally, we listen out for the risk, don't we? We listen out for, and this is why I think this leadership piece is so strong. When you hear something, be open to the possibilities rather than, how's this going to make us look stupid, or how's it going to sort of lower the tone of what we're trying to do. And look, I think a really nice one, this is so simple, run experiments like pilot programs. Hey, we'll test it for 6 or 8 weeks. Great, run with it. Yeah. And there's a company, Atlassian, which is a huge Australia's big unicorn technology company. They're huge. And they've just run a workplace experiment in Melbourne for 15 months, having they've got this policy, work anywhere. So you can literally work anywhere in their 31 countries they're registered for tax or something. But they've set up this hub in Melbourne, which is sort of like a communal room, but it's a workspace as well. And they've just run it for 18 months. And they're either going to say, hey, it's great, it's not so great, or we can make some changes around it. But I like the idea they've signed a short-term lease. It's pretty basic. It's all op-shoppy type stuff. They've decorated it with not the huge, big corporate fit out. And they're just running this experiment. So very little risk, but their staff are giving the feedback. So just think around that. How might we engage people in a back to work space, even though they work anywhere, and they're just running with it. So I love that. Hey, it's an experiment. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Then your boundaries are a lot less for risk, or your parameters are a lot less for risk because it's a really small space and you can feel a lot more comfortable about it. So how simple is that? So where can you run some little pilot tests around these ambiguous questions?
And the pilot programs, the experimentation has to be then absolutely woven in with a healthy feedback culture, because experiments, you need to feed back after those experiments, and they won't be perfect.
Yeah. But the great thing, scientists like to say, I'm either right or I'm wrong. There's no in between, and I'm open to new information. So always just be, someone here has got great ideas, and wherever those great ideas are, I'm happy to follow them.
I should just say as well, because again, we always like that we've thrown in creativity, curiosity, and philosophy as well. So they talk a lot about moral ambiguity, but I suspect that that's another episode altogether.
Oh, John, I'm glad you've mentioned that. Note to self, I'm going to write a little note on my sticky note, put it there. Moral ambiguity. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So
might see some people in the public realm who have moral ambiguity. I should say no more.
No, there's a new government in the UK, and I'm sure there's some moral ambiguity that was left behind with your previous government, from what I've been reading. So there's we're stepping into ambiguous territory, John, for us. So let's see how that goes.
But let's be comfortable about it.
Yeah, just be comfortable.
I'm relaxed.
Embrace
it. I am mindful. I'm in the moment. I can handle it, man. That's been very illuminating.
I think I've had a glass of wine, but maybe I felt a bit smarter than I normally do.
Just a glass, was it, Simon?
No, just a glass. A holiday pour, I think it's
I've seen that touch your lips more than 17 times.
I think it's a holiday pour.
And the level never went down. I couldn't work it out.
In summary, not everything is linear, and that's okay. And linear problems, run it with the same way you've been at before, those quick, easy challenges. But when it's not quick and easy and linear, it's okay to go, yep, that's cool. Understand what our barriers are, but also understand some of the things that will help us get there as well.
Try and seek the question that will move you closer to a solution. Don't get worried that you've not got to a solution straight away. Questions, curiosity.
All right. And on that, John, on that wise sage advice, we hope you.
I am stroking my beard and chin as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely you are. So on that wise sage advice, look, as always, if you enjoyed the show, subscribe, which is a little plus button up in the top of your podcast feed. So when a new show comes out, you'll go ping, there it'll be. Tell your friends, and as we always say, leave a review, because it is good for the podcast algorithm and other people finding out about us. And thank you for all those people who do make the effort to do so. But John, as we always say,
stay curious, play more, make stuff, have fun, and
as always, each and every day as you leave the house, go and date life.